when you're a founder, what you have to do is try things that you just think are a bit mad, but why wouldn't you? As long as you're not doing something foolhardy or risky or disrespectful or whatever it is, and it's within the confines of financial sense, you haven't got so much to lose. Yeah. And both those times when I've done that, have they paid off?
Have you ever wondered why some brands grow exponentially, building legions of passionate fans that live and die by their logos, and some, well, don't? I do, all the time, and that's probably because I'm a massive brand nerd, but I believe there's a secret sauce at the core of every remarkable brand, a formula that sparks the growth of passionate communities of superfans, building a business and a reputation that will last for years to come. In this podcast, we tap into the greatest marketing minds in the world as they share the exact tactics and strategies used to build the world's greatest brands, dropping actionable insights every brand builder can apply. My name is Paul Archer, and I'm a specialist in brand advocacy and word of mouth, having consulted for hundreds of brands on a topic. Co-hosting with me is the wonderful Verity, expert on the bleeding edge of social media. It's time to learn and build brand advocacy.
Okay, so today I am joined by the wonderful founder and creative director of the beautiful women's wear brand WYSE London. Marielle, welcome to the show. It's fabulous to have you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. There's loads of things I want to chat to you about. Obviously, from founding the brand since 2015, sort of finding your niche, the WYSE London community. But I wanted to start with Instagram because obviously Instagram is like a powerhouse in its own right, but I know that it's been a core platform for WYSE London for growth and engagement. And I just wanted to kind of dig into, from a founder's perspective, your relationship with Instagram and sort of and share the strategy behind sort of, WYSE London.
Because strategy, that big word. Yeah. The strategy between us and Instagram.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got over 150,000 followers, and that's not easy. And I suppose it's kind of like, your relationship with it, and how have you got from zero to where you are today?
In all honesty, I'm not sure how, but we have. I think because we converse very, very actively with the customer. So we're really very proactive on Instagram. It's not just a platform for showing pretty pictures. This is what we're doing. This is how you wear. What colour should we do this in? We're constantly, it's a very alive Instagram, if that makes sense. So it's a very focused on our customer and their views and their feedback. So it's really helped us grow because I think for a start, it's made the brand stronger, but it's also really, really made us listen to what she wants. So it's a two-way platform as opposed to a one-way platform, I think. And, it grew a lot for us, which I'm sure we'll come to, during COVID. That was a big, big growth. And we've never really gone back on that.
Oh, nice. Let's just dig into that, because I wanted to ask if you've sort of ever had those moments where you've experienced significant growth on the platform, and obviously COVID is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, to cut a very long story short, we were a wholesale and a direct-to-consumer business. So we operated two models. And then COVID happened in February 2020, March. But February, we'd done a fair, we'd done loads of wholesale orders. Then we went back to the office. They said, we're going to shut the country down and you won't be able to do this, that and the other. And I said, well, we have to cancel every single wholesale order because I don't know what we'll come back to. And then we went home, we halved all the orders, and I took a rail of clothes home and I just turned the camera on myself, Instagram on myself. And I sort of just had this conversation with the customer and I said, well, look, it's pretty rubbish out there. Should we just have a chat to each other and see how we feel? Do you think this is a nice top? And they kind of went, yeah. And I was like, okay, shall we make it? And they were like, yeah. So it was like a funny little virtual conversation in a time where we probably needed that. It was funny because we created we became an Instagram brand at that point, or much more so than we had been before.
Yeah.
And it brought us alive.
Yeah. And you can see that as well. And I mean, obviously your Instagram, it feels personal, but yet it's still got that kind of sophisticated, polished look in an authentic way. It's
kind of not always, but mostly. Yes,
I know, but it's such a wonderful mix to get right, and not everybody can do that.
You know, I think that if you have an authentic brand with a real heart and soul, even if sometimes it's a bit something that you don't exactly want it to be, people will forgive you. They'd rather know that you were true to yourself. And then, you know, you say, actually, that wasn't so great, was it? And they'll say, well, no, but come on, what are you going to do next? So I think, again, it's down to dialogue and it's down to being true to who you are, really.
Yeah.
And I think we're a very true brand.
Yeah. And do you kind of like, with Instagram, do you feel safe then to test and learn different things on that platform?
Yeah, I think we do. And actually they love it. You know, our customer loves it because she loves to be involved and she loves to be validated. And I think that, you know, I this is something I stand by very, very strongly. You are no brand without your customer. You are nothing. So she is number one in my mind. And she gives me a lot of joy as well when we get it right. When we get it wrong, I get frustrated. So she helps me for us to get it better. And we need to converse with her all the time.
Tell me a little bit around the sort of tactics of how you do that two-way dialogue.
Well, we have lives twice a week. We also bring members of the community onto the live as well.
Oh, nice.
So some of the customers come on the live and some of the customers have become friends or they become brand ambassadors or whatever we call them. And so the real woman is represented and we try and show as much different shapes and sizes so we can show clothes on different shapes and size women, you know, different needs. We try often to ask them what they need in their wardrobe. The last thing I want to do is make clothes that no one wants to buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no point for anyone.
Yeah.
And so if she says, look, I really want a pair of, you know, flared jeans in purple or whatever it is, well, happy days for both of us. Chances are she won't, but yeah, it's an openness, I think it's created.
Yeah. How do you think it shifted then, sort of, if you think about your content, I'm going to say the big word again, strategy, but I don't know if brands have strategies anymore. It feels like we're just kind of evolving and reacting to what's happening every day. But how has it shifted from pre-COVID to post-COVID?
That's actually a really interesting question because we have had to change our tone. And not only that, I think Instagram itself has changed from the days, you know, it was an amazing growth tool for me personally because it allowed me with very little budget to grow the brand. Obviously now Instagram is a different platform, so you have to learn the parameters of it a bit better, but you still have to constantly try new things. I think it's all about using your imagination and just thinking the whole time, keeping fresh. What can we do differently? What does the customer want? Serving your end use at the end of the day, but also remembering, you know, how you want to dress women. I think there's this funny thing is, like, I like to tell her what to wear, but I like to ask her what to wear, but I also like to guide her in what to wear. So it's like, come on, try this, you know. She's like, do you think? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. And it's quite sweet, really.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your customer, a little bit more, who she is.
So I think she's probably 35, 40 plus.
Yeah.
She, in many ways, feels a bit unheard. She feels like she wants to be noticed, and I think in a very youth-orientated society, a woman who maybe has had a little bit more experience of life feels a little bit kind of like put down. And so the last thing I want to do is to make her feel like that. I want her to feel very heard. A lot of women say, you've brought my fashion mojo back, you know, you've given me confidence. And actually the whole sort of ethic of the brand is to support her and to make her feel better about herself and not to make her feel or look wrong, you know, not wrong, but just not happy in her soul. So it's to elevate her in her, and it's just very, very lovely to watch.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so powerful. I mean, it sounds so simple. I mean, even this lovely leopard print.
It looks very nice on you.
It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And you notice the difference between something like this, and I'm not going to start bad-mouthing any other brands, but, you know, it just, and it, like I said, it just feels so simple to put on something. And you're right, it does make you feel a little bit more elevated.
And there should be a little twist. And I believe in clothing that it's not shouty clothing necessarily, but it's like a bit different. And somebody comes up to you and go, oh, that's nice. And you kind of, you're not, they haven't noticed, they've talked to you and they've noticed you and they've noticed you look nice, and then they notice what you wear. Not the other way around, not like you've come in and completely dominated the room with what you're wearing. It's a very different perspective.
Absolutely. I want to go back to, you said you just kind of turned the camera around and started talking on Instagram. Did that come naturally to you, I suppose, first of all?
Well, it's a funny old thing, this, because in my varied career of life, which I've had a few careers in life, and this is the first time I've ever run a brand, but I had a television career, and so I used to make natural history documentaries. And so when I had the camera turned on me, I knew a little bit about how to edit myself, and that can be a really powerful tool. And so when you're talking, you're like, stop, you're just waffling on, Marielle, shush. And so you're constantly in your head, you're editing yourself, and it's quite useful, that, actually. So I'm pressing the edit button all the time.
Oh, wow. Would that be sort of your biggest tip then because...
Yes.
I mean...
Less is more.
Less is more.
Definitely. Leave them wanting more. I think, you know, I'm not going to talk about what other people do. It's not my business. But I think you are better, shorter and sweeter in life. And getting to the point, having a joke, having fun. The other thing is, I find with it is it's not just about, here's a pretty top, it's a lovely shade of, you know, beige or whatever it is. It's about the other bits, you know, oh gosh, my son's just, you know, I sort of do little asides, and I don't do it. It's only because it's a community and they know I've got 2 children, and sometimes I say I'm off to Paris, or, you know, I don't give details or anything like that, but I like to bring in the reality of my life, because I'm a woman just like them.
Yeah. I'm
exactly the same as our customer. There's no difference between us.
And I suppose that, how are you going to ensure, because obviously the brand's going to grow, and, you know.
I hope.
Yeah, it is, and it will. How are you going to ensure, because obviously you are very much the face of the brand, how are you going to ensure that maintains? And
it's a very, very, very good question. And it is something that I'm acutely aware of. I think we need to bring more people in that represent the brand and that have the same tone, and I'm already doing that. So, you know, there are people that are involved that have a similar outlook. So you just have to have more voices that can do that. And in theory, that should filter through. I mean, when I go into the shops and I see the members of staff and they say to me, and I meet the customers and they've had a great experience, that is an extension of me, that I want them to feel exactly the same as if it was me serving them. So the staff that work in the shop are just an extension of me.
Yeah.
So I'm very nurturing, hopefully, of the staff, so they can nurture the customer as well.
I mean, that must be really difficult.
It requires work and focus and thought, and all those things.
But if you get that right, that's definitely going to pay off.
I think it's people thank you. You know, I do not want people to go in, just as much as I was saying, you know, it's a difficult time for some of the women's lives. I don't want them to go in there and walk out feeling worse about themselves. I want them to come out feeling better about themselves. And they often do. They mostly do, definitely.
Yeah. And how would that work online then as well? Like, because obviously you're doing the Instagram lives mostly.
I think the imagery in itself is quite warm as well. I sort of don't want it too aloof. I want the imagery to be relaxed and a little bit sexy, a bit engaging, a bit warm, but I don't want it to be too scary. You know, I want her to feel like she can achieve that look. I mean, that's why a lot of our customers say they like it on, I have this lovely colleague that I work with called Kath, and they like to see it on us because we represent their age group, or some other people, but, you know, more, not just the young girl.
And we have an audience full of marketers, and, you know, some of them work with founder-led brands, and founder-led brands are becoming more and more prominent these days. But not every founder is as natural or wants or kind of even gets the concept of how important it is to be the face of a brand or to get out there and show themselves, what would be your tips or advice to the marketers that are kind of in that place where they're desperately trying to get more of their founder or, you know, other people in the business to get involved?
Well, I think you can't force what's the expression? Square peg into a round hole or something. I think you've got to work a little bit with what you've got. You can't make somebody something they're not. You can bring out elements of a person. If you can spot elements and you can give them confidence, you can make them a little bit better. But I think spotting, and if it isn't that person, it could be another person. I think you have to be realistic. You don't want to go down, be inauthentic and make somebody do something that they don't feel comfortable in. But you might be able to spot another person or another tool, another way of doing it that they feel comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, something that's really popping up at the moment is obviously employee generated content as well. And obviously you've just mentioned your team in the stores. Would you consider bringing them into the online?
Well, you know, just as you're saying it, I'm just thinking, maybe I should go to the stores and do some content with it. I'm constantly thinking of ideas. 100%. You know what? Try it.
Yeah.
Like the chances are it probably will work because they love it. And what they love is when it's not quite right. You know, like a bit messy and it goes a bit wrong and there's a giggle in the corner. And the best Instagrams I've ever done is when the DHL man sort of knocks at the door halfway through and I have to go and then he wants a chat and I can't have a chat and they're giggling away and then they converse with each other and I'm like, no, you know, anyway, quite funny.
I was just going to ask you actually, what has been one of your most successful Instagram lives and why? And
there was one I did with this girl, this woman that we still work with called Judith. I remember to this very day. It was her first or second one and she just couldn't get it right. And then the camera kept falling over and then this, that and the other. And I just got the giggles and everybody was and it was just chaotic. And she was trying to follow, you know, try clothes on and everything. And the whole thing was just a shambles. But at the end of it, I just was just giggling for like 20 minutes. It was just funny.
But that's very natural.
Yeah, it was really natural.
Yeah, I love that.
But we were a bit more professional the next time.
I mean, let's kind of go into the Instagram live. So you're doing 2 a week. I mean, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot.
What is kind of like your process of setting up an Instagram live? I'm guessing 2 a week.
Do you want to know the honest answer?
I was going to say, you've probably got this nailed, right? But maybe not.
Well, it's not that professional. I don't know about that. I take a couple of suitcases, get sent home. I put them on a rail and I do a live. That's in the at home where I do 1 a week.
Yeah.
And then we have a shop one and there we bring on guests and that's all sent ahead of time. And I mean, it's actually quite slick now. We've got it down to quite a good art. And what happens with the lives is that we have a certain amount viewing and then it builds during time.
Yeah.
And we get some good, you know, we have fun and the Christmas ones are fun and it might be a birthday or I might get my daughter on if I can ever get her on. They love it when she comes on. But it's a bit like gold dust, that one.
Yeah. How old is your daughter?
She's 23.
Oh, okay.
They love it because she gives me a little bit of attitude and it's quite funny.
I want to see that. Let's do it for Christmas.
Yeah, I'll try.
Hey, it's me again. This podcast is sponsored by Duel, which is it's my company, actually. Duel is the leading brand advocacy platform used by the top retail consumer brands, including Unilever, Charlotte Tilbury, Elemis, Loop, and about 50 more, to manage, measure, and scale their advocacy, member, affiliate, creator, and brand ambassador operations. The platform offers unparalleled scale for complex brands by automating 9 out of 10 of the standard advocacy management activities and allowing them to focus on arming their advocates with the right tools to tell the brand story and drive social commerce. They can grow faster for less. We only work with 15% or so of the brands we speak to, but we try and add value in many other ways, this podcast being one of them. So if you are a brand that's interested in this, maybe a large consumer retail brand, ideally you're doing $20, $30 million as a minimum, and you're pretty advanced on social and you need to know what the next stage is, then please get in touch. Email me, paul@duel.tech. That is paul@duel.tech or Google duel.tech.
And I suppose, how have you found the lives in terms of building a deeper connection with your community or your customers?
Oh, huge. I mean, because you haven't just got the lives, you've got direct messaging as well. So you've got two things. So we use direct messaging all the time.
Okay.
For example, I put a top on. If I put a top on, I said, shall we do this colour or this colour? That's it. Off they go, answering, and it could be on a poll or it could be on a DM or it could be on comments, constantly. Like, for example, we're doing a sample sale. I put, oh, why aren't you doing one in Bath? Why aren't you doing one in York? Why aren't you doing one in Edinburgh? My head is, why aren't you doing one online? It's like, because we can't, but it's fair point. And I'm fair game for it, you know?
Well, that's a big thing, isn't it, now, DMs and this sort of like private, dark social space, because I don't know about you, but when I'm sort of even just scrolling socials, I don't really engage that much. But if I see something, I'll probably send it to someone or create a conversation in the DMs. And I think that is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out next year. And
are they changing things?
No, just in terms of like how much that's going to grow.
Oh, I see. Yes. I used to reply to all the DMs. Obviously now I don't, but I keep an eye. I constantly have a quick look.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about the next phase of WYSE London, and I wanted to, in terms of your vision, how do you see it evolving? And this could be obviously as a brand as a whole, but also on social. Like, obviously Instagram, as we've talked about, is the core platform, but what does that look like outside of Instagram? And what is the next phase?
I think we will potentially open more retail stores. Something we think about. Grow in the US, also something we think about, or actively doing, in fact.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Offer more range of product because we should and must. Just fine tune what you constantly learn and hopefully grow. For me personally, I would like to be able to delegate more efficiently to the team, because it's been quite, leading a brand for 10 years it's been quite intense, if I'm honest. And quite intense is an understatement. It's been very intense. And I've got to a stage in my life where I think, okay, I want to do the nicer bits and I want the team to be able to step up for the other bits. I mean, that's what it's all about, really. And it has to go that way, because I have got only so much, I can give.
Yeah. And I want to just go back to the US piece, because obviously there's a lot of UK brands obviously trying to break out over there. What have been some of your learnings? What's going on in
they respond
market?
very much to when we send brochures. They love that. They love the imagery we provide. I think we've got enormous growth potential there. And in terms of what we make as product, we're not really like anybody else. So, that kind of word that I don't really love, but white space, we do have some white space that we cannot fill.
Yeah.
So it's identifying what that is. So we're constantly looking at what's selling in the US versus what sells in the UK. And it's always fascinating. It's expensive to grow in the US, though. Very expensive.
I can imagine.
So you have to really budget it and know what you're doing, because otherwise you can literally throw money at it.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah. When did you start going into the US?
Well, we've had organic growth in the US, but now we're targeting it. And some of the members of team have done that before. And so we have a target amount that we're going for, and then you sort of budget for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Are you going over there quite a bit, or the team?
Well, my son is in New York, actually, so I am going over there, but not for work. But I will do increasingly as we grow. I will start to. I think I'm mindful of getting a shop, because even though I'm very tempted, sort of, my vanity side is very tempted to get one, they're incredibly expensive and the staffing is incredible. And remember, you're in the UK, so you've got a shop that you're running abroad, and you can't go and just visit it every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, there must be some huge complications to that as well. And as you say, going back to how you kind of nurturing your team here, getting that culture piece over there when you are based in the UK.
Very hard. Yeah.
Very hard. Okay, I want to just chat about the community. Obviously, you've got a very
My
strong...
lovely community.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, tell me a little bit more about the WYSE London community.
Oh, I know that like so many of the names that pop up, I'm like, oh, hi. Some of these women I've now met. Many of them I have. And actually I've some friends as well. I've made friends through it. And some of them I've never met, but I know exactly. And I almost know their humour as well. And so, for example, yesterday I was doing a live and I was talking about something I was watching on Netflix or whatever, an Apple TV, and it was it's quite raunchy what I'm watching. It's called The Disclaimer. Anyway, that set them off. Then they were just like, oh, have you watched this and this and this? And I'm just giggling away because I'm trying to show close, and they're just talking about what's going on in these programs, and it amused me. And I know some of the people that are doing it, and there's a couple that are particularly cheeky. But it's all within the parameters of, of really being funny and engaged and positive. One thing we don't tolerate is negativity. And if we get that, we really shut it down very quickly because there's constructive criticism and then there's negativity, and they're very different things.
And it's so easy to be behind.
And it can really throw you when it happens.
Have you had to deal with that a lot?
Oh, yeah. And we've had rogues as well in there. And, but then they come in, the community comes in and blocks them. So they then act very quickly, which you can do apparently. So, there's a few weird people that have turned up. Yeah. You're a bit game, aren't you, really? It's alive,
Anyone could get in there.
Anyone can get in and say some weird stuff, and they have. Yeah.
I won't ask you.
No, don't ask.
What do you think has been the best way that you've nurtured the community?
Well, for a start, meeting them in the flesh has been huge. And, we do a lot of customer events. So we've got quite a few lined up for November. Listening to them on we sometimes even send them a recorded message. It's really as much engagement as you possibly can. And it's really also just saying, sometimes they say, oh, I love this one. And I say, why is that? I don't just take that statement. I say, why did you like that? Because I'm curious to know why and I'm also curious to know why you didn't like it. I always say, actually, with product, particularly with product, it's all great, the good sellers and everything, but why didn't she like the bad sellers? What is it about that? I find that almost more interesting.
I can imagine you learn more from that.
Oh, way more.
Yeah.
Way more.
Yeah.
Way more.
That's really nice. And I love the recorded messages ideas as well.
Yeah,
That's
it's
lovely.
sweet, right? Yeah, it's nice.
Such a simple touch, but goes a long way. And in terms of creators and partnerships, because obviously we just had a lovely partnership with Deborah
Brett, which has been ongoing.
Yeah. How do you kind of identify either creators or partnerships that?
I think it's women that are sort of like-minded and that are stylish, love clothes, maybe have a different DNA to us. I try not to look for a replica because that doesn't then work, or we don't need it really, but somebody who has a slightly different handwriting to us and pushes us out of our comfort zone as well. I think that's a really good way. And Deborah's got a fantastic personal handwriting and actually wardrobe, come to that.
Yeah.
She's got an extraordinary wardrobe, and she makes some beautiful things. Beautiful.
Yeah, it is a beautiful partnership. And how do you I suppose with creators then, different to the partnerships, do you what's your creator strategy or the influencer piece?
We work a little bit with them, and we have some creator. I have some very old friends from the way back when the brand was very small and we work with still. We haven't got a huge creator. I mean, it's something we are looking at to do more of because it is quite successful for us when we do it. We're so organic in many ways that we've sort of almost created ourselves as our own ambassadors. So the other people that come along just reach a different audience. It's something we are looking at evolving and using more, definitely.
But I mean, it's incredible that you've got such an organic sort of advocates in its work.
Yeah, we do, but it has its limitations. So you have to, in order to grow the brand, you have to find other ways to get other people's attention that wouldn't normally see you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think this is one thing that a lot of brands don't sort of dig into the kind of the opportunities that they've got with all these different pools of network within their brand network, I suppose.
Yeah, and also you've got to make it, again, the right partnership and the right person that you're working with that feels good for the brand and that represent, otherwise sometimes I just look at stuff, I'm like, that's not true. That doesn't ring true. And I've slightly lost interest a little bit because of that. So it has to be a good relationship as well.
Yeah. Okay, your founding story.
Oh, yes.
On the website, it says it started with a rainbow.
It did? Well, that was, and a star, actually, thinking about it. Because I remember going down Shepherd's Bush Market with looking for some leather and trying to cut it out myself to put leather star elbow pads on. Oh. And I got the scissors out and I remember I couldn't cut, and it was such a mess. And then for some reason, somebody said, you've got to get them laser cut. I was like, what the hell's laser cut? So anyway, then I'm, rushing to get to a laser cut. It was all started with 5 cashmere jumpers. One had a star on it, one had a rainbow on it.
Oh, lovely. Okay. So, and then you said that you've obviously been in the TV industry. And I mean, you started WYSE London when you were 49 as well. So yeah, I'd love to just find out a little bit more about your background. And
so I have, so basically the short story is that I had a successful career in television directing, producing, and I was traveling a lot, and I had one child, carried on traveling, second child couldn't travel anymore, and it was a lot of traveling, so that put an end to that career literally overnight. And I was a stay-at-home mum for about 8 years, and then I was getting now I look back, I was bored, very bored, and I wanted to do something, but I didn't quite know what I could do. And so I had a very, very dear friend who I still have, who said, you love you've always given me, she made cashmere scarves, she said, you always got ideas. She said, what's your idea? I said, well, I always want to get a cashmere jumper that's got this and that detail on it at this price, but I can't find it. She said, well, here's a factory, you do it. So I went, oh, okay. So I made 5 jumpers, and then we started selling in direct, retail fairs and school fairs and things like that, and it grew from there.
That's incredible.
I had no idea that I was starting a business. I just sort of gave it a shot.
Yeah. What has been sort of your biggest personal, I suppose, growth moment in the last 10 years?
I think the early days really. I mean, there were 2 that I can think of that are pivotal. One was the first. So I did Spirit of Christmas, which is a fair at Olympia. It's a kind of direct consumer fair. I did it in the summer before, and it was quite busy. And I thought, this is going to be really interesting with cashmere jumpers. And I remember we were mobbed. I had the tiniest stand. We were mobbed. And all of a sudden, I've got this money coming into the business. I've got a pot of cash because I've outlaid a little bit, but I've got a lot more to go into the business. And I'm thinking, what the hell's just gone on? And there's a picture of me just scratching my head outside the stand. I was just so confused. I mean, it was amazing, and I was just thrilled. And then that was the first big memory, and the second was during COVID, where it just shot up, and the business just flew. And again, it was not a dissimilar feeling of like, oh my God, this just is working. This makes sense. And sometimes I think, when you're a founder, what you have to do is try things that you just think are a bit mad, but why wouldn't you? Kind of thing. As long as you're not doing something foolhardy or risky or disrespectful or whatever it is, and it's within the confines of financial sense, you haven't got so much to lose.
Yeah.
And both those times when I've done that, have they paid off?
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, there's such a big piece now, like this cultural piece now, where even we interviewed the CMO from Beekman, and he was saying that they have a very big culture of like failure, because that's and I think we are in an era now where we can really go for failure in a way to learn. Failure
is such an interesting subject, isn't it? And I think about it so much because I have failed so many times. Everyone says, oh, you grow from failure, and you do. It's not easy to fail. It hurts. And you know what? It still hurts to this day. And do I take it personally? Of course I do. I do. I'm like, why not? Not always, by the way. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. But you do learn so much. Of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah. And I have to ask, obviously on the Building Brand Advocacy podcast, what do most brands get wrong when it comes to brand advocacy?
One thing that I think that people can do more is seize opportunity. One thing I think I've learned from our brand is the ability to pivot very quickly to different, because the marketplace is so uncertain and so tricky. I think if you stick into too much of a structured path, you don't allow yourself to pivot as much as you potentially need to. Depends on the size of your brand, but even so, big brands should be able to pivot really in order to respond to the customer needs. I think it's the only way to stay healthy. So I think to be too single-minded and not open is not for me, it's not the way forward.
I love that. I really love that. And I think it really shows the brands that are growing today versus the ones that don't have that mentality. You can really see the ones that are standing out.
I think it is a very different marketplace out there. But I mean, the algorithm of Instagram is very, very clever. And I get fed all these things. And even like Apple operate, in very much a way like a startup.
Yeah.
And I think that they fail, don't they? They've failed loads.
Yeah.
I mean, those headphones that my daughter's got, they don't work very well. That's not great, is it?
Absolutely not. Where can our audience find you, Marielle?
So we're on wyselondon.com. And we've got three stores, one in Southwold, one which is in Suffolk, one on Marylebone High Street and one in the King's Road.
I remembered what I was going to say to you before. And it was, someone said, open a store or do a sample sale in York. And I was like, yes, please do one in York because that's where I live.
Okay, York it is then. York will be number 2. Okay, it's a deal.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a lovely chat.
Thank you for having me, Verity.
You're welcome.
That was another episode of Building Brand Advocacy, the world's top brand building podcast. To find out more about building brand advocacy and how this podcast is part of a bigger plan for our brand building cookbook, then make sure to search for Building Brand Advocacy in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found, and make sure that you click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Duel for sponsoring. To find out more, go to www.duel.tech, that's duel.tech. And on behalf of the team here at Building Brand Advocacy, thanks for listening.